So today's Wednesday, as we established. I mean, in this conversation, but I think before we hit the record button, but you were talking. You did not visit a comic book store today. Of course, Wednesday is New Comic Book Day. You're a avid reader of comic books to this day, you would say?
I buy a lot of comics.
Oh, okay, well that's the same thing as far as people know.
Yeah, as far as anybody's concerned, yeah, I'm an avid reader of comic books. It was a thing of pride at one point that I had, like 10,000 comics at one point. It was horrible. I hated it.
Yeah.
I put them in a storage unit and then was like, yeah, they'll be there anytime I want to go get them. And then I never went and got them, ever. I just didn't. And so when I was getting prepped to move to Maryland, I was like, I don't want these in my possession. It's just going to make moving around all the more difficult. And so I got rid of pretty much all of them. I don't know that I kept. I think I had one short box that I kept of stuff.
Now, do you it was a hassle? It took up room, storage space. I get it, but now that you've got rid of them, does part of you regret it?
Not really. Generally speaking, there's a couple of things I've gone back and gotten, like one or two, there's some, nostalgic stuff and a couple of things I had that did turn out to be worth money that I'm a little sad I didn't hang on to. But
yeah, one
of the most shocking things for me that's turned out to be worth money, comics are a weird, crapshoot in that, will it be worth money? And, obviously the speculator market now is at an all-time high. Weird stuff becomes valuable now. Obviously, the MCU made a lot of stuff really popular for a long time because you would have a character show up in a book. Obviously, the first appearance of Bucky is worth a lot, but the first appearance of Bucky as the Winter Soldier became worth a lot. Or the first appearance of Red Hulk now has ticked up in price, and these things come through and just randomly gain value. For a while there, Image stuff, which oddly we'll talk probably a little bit more about in a bit. The number one, Walking Dead number one or Chew number one or certain stuff all became valuable because in those cases, the first issue wasn't bought a whole lot. So when it got super popular, going back and trying to find one of the 5,000 copies of Walking Dead number one is a lot harder than trying to find one of the 500,000 copies of Walking Dead number 100.
Yeah. Or to your point about adaptations making the comics more valuable, I at one point because I read The Walking Dead monthly, but not from issue 1. I didn't have the super valuable ones, but I did have the first appearance of Michonne, and then of course once she appears on the TV show, that value shot up. And I don't know if I had 10,000. I never counted my books, but I had 12 long boxes full, which I didn't have them in storage, so they were literally I don't know if people don't have long boxes, how hard it is to envision this, but it's half of a room. I mean, I had them in a dining room at one point, which we could not use as the dining room because it was comics. And I was just a friend of the show, my wife, who at the time was friend of No Show, my girlfriend, because the show didn't exist and we weren't married, never told me to get rid of it. She didn't put any pressure on it, but I was I feel bad. I'm taking up all this room with these books I'm not even reading. I sold them all. I deeply regret it's a little strong, but I often think about all the cool stuff I had that I don't have. But I was never gonna read them again. But it's just cool to have. It's collecting,
It's the one that's always been interesting. Is one of the first comics that was ever bought for me. I was homesick in the 6th grade, and my dad went to go get something weird happened. I'm still not entirely sure what happened here. This is a weird story. I don't know if I've ever told it to you. My parents have a pool in their backyard. I had a pool in the backyard growing up. One day, my brother and I were doing that thing, how long can you hold your breath while swimming through the pool? And we were doing lengths of the pool. And I did 3 lengths of the pool, felt really good about it, got out of the pool, and then had the most crippling head pain that I've ever had in my life. You did
3 lengths of the pool without taking a breath?
It's not a long pool, man. It's a backyard pool.
Okay, still sounds impressive. You may as well say it's a long pool. Make this sound more impressive. But okay, all right.
Anyway, but I
Did
got
you
out
eat
of
a
the water.
bologna sandwich with Doritos crushed into it?
I wish.
That's the best thing to eat after a swimming pool.
Probably would have prevented this. But anyway, I had the most crippling headache to the point that like I couldn't do anything. The pain was so bad. It was awful. Like I laid inside and like my parents were giving me like medications and it wasn't helping and like nothing was helping. So I don't know what happened here. Eventually my mom was like, this is weird. I'm taking him to the emergency room. And they did everything. Like they scanned me. I got a CAT scan, I think. They were genuinely looking for like anything. And they didn't find anything. So American medications, being what they are, they sent me home with 5 medications. So I still do not know what happened. Couldn't tell you. And then for like a few months after that, I would just randomly get like biting pain in my head. And I was like, this is the worst. Like, what is happening?
We're talking like migraine
stopped.
type pain?
Like, maybe. I don't know. Like, I guess in hindsight, but I was like 11. So I don't really know. Anyway, the first day I stayed home, my dad went and got me a bunch of medications. And he went to a place called Superstand. I don't know if you remember such an establishment.
I do not. No.
But it was a magazine store. Can't imagine why it didn't last. But he bought me a copy of Batman Beyond #1. And it was the tie-in issue that came out that literally just retold the first part of the television pilot. But he got me that. And I read it so much that the cover fell off of it. And I eventually got more of them. And they did like a mini series and all of that. And for the longest time, you could buy copies of that book for almost nothing. It was not valuable. It was like any animated tie-in. It was just not super valuable. And that comic now, if you have an actual like graded copy of it, I've seen it go for over $1,000.
Wow.
And because what it retroactively becomes
the first
comic book appearance of Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
So when DC brought him into continuity and started doing Batman Beyond stuff, it became retroactively.
We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts. It's basically the same thing happened to Harley. Yeah, so when Harley Quinn debuted in the comic, not that big deal because of Batman. But then when she shifts over into the main continuity, now suddenly that book is the first comic book appearance of Harley Quinn, and it becomes a big deal. So there's a variety of different versions of that Batman Beyond #1 out there. But like here's one right now. It's on eBay, a 9.8 graded first print direct sales version. Right now they want $1,400 for it. Now is it going to sell for that much? Maybe not, but I've seen it regularly go for several $100s. And then there's like even the free comic book day version is like with like the stamp space on it and everything that goes for over $200 or $300. Like any version of that book now pretty much goes for a not insignificant amount of money.
And Andrew, how much money are you willing to pay for this piece of your childhood that holds such sentimental value?
I would not spend more than, I don't know, I would not spend more than, I would feel stupid. Saying the number out loud at all feels dumb, but like I would cap out at like $100. And like that would still be me being like, this is dumb, but you can spare this and you would likely just spend it on something else dumb. So it's fine. But yeah, like, and I see copies here. They're not graded. You can get them for a decent amount of money. It's not terrible, but, and then if you're not a stickler for like a 9.8, obviously the 9.8 graded stuff, here's an 8.5 that's listed for 90. So, but, that's probably the weirdest thing that I had as a comic that, became valuable that I never would have expected. Never. Like, that's the one where I'm like, that's strange. That's a weird thing, but who knows?
All right, hang on. I'm going to go to eBay and I'm going to look for the first comic book that my dad bought me. Here we go. It was Image Comics, Pit, #1, 99 cents. So it would not be hard for me to claim that.
Would not.
Pit.
It's wild. Like, I think, like, I had the first Damian Wayne, and that's one that doesn't go for that much because Damian hasn't been in a movie yet, but he will be. And so I'm curious if I should because I used to have that one. That was the whole big Grant Morrison Batman run that ran for many years. But like, you can still get that one for like $40, and it's like, cool. Will it be worth? Thing is, like, I don't really care if it's worth money. It'd just be cool to have it again because I used to have it. Like,
yeah,
that's the kind of stuff I run into. Where like I had the whole Grant Morrison Batman run. I did, and like even with all his weird like epilogues and interludes that he did in later years, like I have all of it. So it's kind of cool. Like I used to have most of All-Star. I used to have also all of All-Star Superman. Like I used to have a lot of stuff like that. Where I'm like,
look at this, Andrew. You regret it. You regret it. Some part of you regrets not having that stuff anymore.
A little bit. But then I have like nice hardcover collections of it. So if I want to read it, it's right there. Like if I buy it again, it's quite literally just gonna be like shoved into a box that sits in my basement or a closet for however long. So
yeah, that's collecting. Theme song.
We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello and welcome to Best of the Rest. My name is Chris Logan and I am joined as always by my codependent co-host, Andrew Williams. Say something to the listeners, Andrew.
something to the listeners.
Each week, we take a second look at a movie that was poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. It's Nic Cage month, and this week we are talking the 2023 film, Renfield. Andrew, what is your history with this movie?
I saw it in theaters. This is one of the probably more recent movies that we've certainly covered. This only came out almost exactly 2 years ago. Wow.
Yeah, almost to the day, yeah.
Almost to
time
the day
recording.
when we're recording this. But it's, yeah, so I saw it in theaters, I saw a lot of trailers for it, but I had a good time with it. I thought it was a lot of fun. Haven't rewatched it too much since then, but went back to watch it for this, and I was like, this won't be a problem at all. Like, this was fun. It was a blast. So, I can't say there's a greater history there simply because the movie hasn't been around that long.
Sure.
But, did see it in theaters, supported that meager box office we'll talk about shortly, and then, just excited to talk about it.
I didn't catch this one in theaters. I had not seen it until this week, getting ready for this podcast. And that's not for lack of interest. The trailers look awesome. I love the concept. Nic Cage as Dracula. It looked really cool. Looked like a lot of fun. Friend of the show, my wife, had seen it before. I think she caught it when it hit streaming on Peacock, but I didn't watch it at the time. But didn't get to theaters to watch it. We had a kiddo in 2020. It's been hard to get to theaters ever since then. So it's not one I was able to catch. But I'm glad, thanks to this podcast, I'm finally able to sit down and watch it. Whenever we were prepping this month, Nic Cage month, I was a little surprised that this was, quote unquote, qualified for our show. But it definitely does, as we are gonna get into. As we said, the movie released April 14th, 2023. It was made on a budget of $65 million, but at the box office, it only brought in $26.9 million. That is a bomb, certified flop. I mean, we're talking 2023, like we're theaters are back, we're not getting high profile releases every weekend, I think at the time, but people are feeling comfortable going back to theaters. In other words,
The vaccine was out. Like, it was.
can't use
it
COVID
was-
as an excuse for this one, especially whenever, Spider-Man hit $1 billion. What was that? 5 months before this. So.
Well, I don't know that I'd say, like, obviously COVID wasn't keeping people at home in a literal sense, but I think this movie definitely suffered from the general impact COVID had on going to movie theaters, where, like, we are in an interesting time where, like, there is, unless a movie is like an event, people don't really feel the need to go. Because studios largely spent most of COVID releasing their stuff in other fashions, dropping things straight to streaming, putting stuff on their streaming platforms. They kind of created this notion that, like, you don't really need to go to theaters. And so for something like Renfield, like, that seemed like a perfectly fine, fun movie. When people are still making kind of cautionary decisions, when people are deciding what to spend their money on, when people are kind of thinking about what to do, Renfield just isn't on the radar. And so I wouldn't say, obviously, people stayed home because of COVID being a threat, as much as I think this suffers in that bubble of studios inadvertently, to a general audience, made a lot of movies feel unimportant. That feels like kind of a harsh way to put it, but it's that thing where, like, so you see a trailer for something like this and it sent the message, like, we'll watch that when it hits video or it hits streaming or something. It's like, it looks fun, but not going to spend $40 going to the movies to watch it.
I said a minute ago that Spider-Man made $1 billion 5 months before. It was actually a year and 5 months before.
Yeah.
I was thinking it came out at the end of 22, came out at the end of 21.
Yeah.
I had to Google and check this because, Andrew, our podcast is on YouTube. Technically, it's not a video, it's just audio only, but it automatically uploads there. And we get a decent number of listeners, people check in there and stuff. And every now and then I look at the comments we get, and it's almost always people correcting us for something one of us said off the cuff. So now I feel a little self-conscious. I got to make sure I get the correction in here on the episode so we don't get someone going, actually, it came out earlier than that. Andrew, I shared a particularly funny comment with you that someone had to correct you for not knowing who Sean Connery was. You referred to him as some old guy. and I guess the sarcasm didn't translate onto YouTube.
Apparently not. No. You sent me that, and, like, I genuinely didn't know what you were sending me at first. Like, you sent me a link to our YouTube. I was like, man, what you say? Yeah, it's our episode, man. Cool, whatever. Like, I know it's there. Like, I was a little confused, and then, like, I saw the comment, and they were like, actually, some old guy. I was like, oh my god, I better retire. Because he said, like, you should quit if you don't know who Sean Connery is.
Yeah, what kind of movie reviewer doesn't know who Sean Connery is?
Like, we had time to retire.
We had another comment that was what's the day the earth stood still, and the comment was just, it's just interviews, not the movie, all caps. Just warning other people that it's a podcast and not the actual film. They're gonna click on it.
Okay.
All right, so this movie, it's also not well received critically, which is another thing that could have contributed to that box office in a day of Rotten Tomatoes and checking scores first. Is this worth going to the theaters, or should I wait for streaming? It has just a 58% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. That is rotten. I mean, it's not abysmal, it's not critically panned, but it's far from enthusiastic. Audience score is significantly higher, 78%, so people that did go see the movie seem to have enjoyed it, but critically, it is just not really hitting. I tried to dig into some of the reviews more specifically, and none of them are really scathing, but they're lukewarm at best. It just wasn't really striking a chord.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's odd in that it sort of feels like the general consensus was that, like, the movie almost doesn't do enough with its concept. Like,
yeah,
it was this weird, like, they basically kind of liked everything they were seeing, but, like, they kind of were like, this all just kind of doesn't feel like it's coming together. Because, like, there is this, the driving plot is a little strange of, like, the central conceit of what Dracula ends up doing, but, like, yeah, it was definitely, like, it felt like they were just like, this could have been more, I guess, was the general consensus. that like it was fine, and most of the reviews would almost like one of the reviews I just read here was literally, there's a spicier, punchier, and sillier movie trapped inside. Shame it couldn't be coaxed out. Like it just doesn't. Stuff like that felt like the kind of general idea of just like there could have been more here. But that being said, almost everybody kind of agrees that what is here is still pretty entertaining. So it's wild, yeah.
Taking a look at the creative team, the movie is written by Ryan Ridley. Now, Ryan Ridley comes mainly from the TV writing world, has some credits on shows like Community and Rick and Morty, as well as the Amazon Prime comic book adaptation Invincible, which might give us a hint as to why he got the duties for writing this script. Because, well, the production of this movie is long and storied, but the version that eventually makes it to screen starts with a story pitch by Robert Kirkman, who is a pretty big name in the world of comics, especially independent comics. Writer of The Walking Dead, we're talking about earlier, as well as Invincible, has his own imprint and media company at this point, and becomes one of the teams that produces this movie. So it looks like he kind of brought in somebody that he has some creative, familiar working relationship with, gives him a shot on writing a screenplay, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean he was in the he was kind of in the Dan Harmon circle for a while. Ryan Ridley was, for that matter. He was a writer on Community. Was involved in, he's listed on 25 episodes, but he was an executive story editor, a staff writer, and then had episode credits. He was on the Harmontown podcast series. He has Rick and Morty episodes that he was contributed to, and then obviously, like you said, enters the kind of Kirkman verse by working on Invincible. So he's got some pretty big clout there, because obviously the Dan Harmon stuff is generally pretty well liked, and then obviously Robert Kirkman is probably the most successful modern comics writer, like of the people that kind of appear after like the Image burst and even the early aughts. Like he's probably the most successful writer of like the aughts into the 2010s. I wouldn't know if I'd necessarily say he's notable. Like I don't know that the average person could tell you who Robert Kirkman was, but between obviously Walking Dead and then the 1-2 punch with now Invincible, he's, his properties have become kind of household names at this point, certainly in the Walking Dead regard. He's also responsible for the first 2 Marvel Zombies series. So obviously Marvel Zombies kind of percolating within the What If verse. That's spins out of those Marvel Zombies comics, which I guess technically begin in Ultimate Fantastic Four, which is written by somebody else, but that first Marvel Zombies series is written by him. And he's got,
I'm glad he clarified that. That would have been another YouTube comment. Actually, Marvel Zombies started.
Yes, Mark Miller created Marvel Zombies, yes, and he did it with probably Greg Land. Anyway, he's written a bunch of other stuff that I have he introduced the Eric O'Grady Ant-Man, I think his name was, the third Ant-Man, basically after Hank Pym and Scott Lang. Has done a bunch of fun stuff at Image too. Did like the Astounding Wolfman and Firepower, the weird stuff like Outcast, which is like a exorcism story or a possession story. And he's actually doing a book called Void Rivals now.
He had a fun one-off called Sea Bear versus Land Shark, or maybe it's Land Shark versus Sea Bear.
Something like that. But he's actually currently doing. It was actually funny. He did a new book called Void Rivals that was inadvertently, or I guess secretly, revealed to be the launch of the Energon universe at the Skybound imprint of Image, which led to the Transformers G.I. Joe comics coming over to Image under his imprint. And I will tell you guys, the Transformers comic that is currently being published, that was originally written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson and is now just being written by Daniel Warren Johnson, is exceptional. Everything Daniel Warren Johnson does is amazing. Have I told you about Do a Powerbomb?
No, this does not sound familiar.
So Do a Powerbomb is a comic about a necromancer who doesn't know wrestling isn't real.
Okay.
So he stages like a multi-dimensional wrestling tournament with the reward being that you get to bring someone you want back to life. And he calls in people from all over the universe. And he brings in this team from our planet to participate in this tournament. And they literally are like, so they're like, okay, so like, what are the finishes? What are we going to be doing? Like, what's the deal? And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, like wrestling's like, like you talk through the finishes, you talk through who's going to win. And he starts laughing because he thinks they're joking with him. So the whole premise of the book is centered on this ridiculous idea of a necromancer who doesn't know wrestling isn't real. And folks, I know, let's not get into the wrestling real versus fake thing. I watch wrestling, I get it. But like, I don't want another YouTube comment. But I don't want actually, Andrew, these are trained athletes who sacrifice their... I know.
Can't fake gravity.
Anyway, the comic is wonderful. It has a lot of heart. That's kind of what he's known for, is he takes these kind of insane concepts but injects them with a lot of humanity and a lot of emotion and makes them work really, really well. So if you like wrestling and you like good storytelling, do a Powerbomb. Worth checking out. Anyway, Robert Kirkman obviously has taken a few forays into television and film. He wrote a few episodes of The Walking Dead and, the series that are kind of based on his things. Has a producer credit on a weird movie from 2015 called Air that I've never heard of. I guess Skybound Entertainment was one of the production companies. So, but yeah, I kind of forgot that he was involved with this. I didn't remember that at all. So, what a fun little surprise.
Yeah, so we covered the Mummy, the Tom Cruise Mummy. We talked on that episode pretty extensively about the dark universe and the multiple attempts to get that shared universe started. And it ended up just really crashing after the failure of the Mummy, again, which we talked about. So Universal is like, well, okay, what do we do with these properties? And they decided to go the more not connected, reinvent each character individually route. The Invisible Man we've talked about, we're big fans. And this was an attempt at a Dracula standalone story. And that's where Robert Kirkman's pitch comes in, and we're off to the races here.
Yeah.
And then for a director, we bring in Chris McKay, which I don't really know why, but I like the choice. And I say that because most of his background is in animation. Again, going back to television, does a couple seasons of Robot Chicken. Gets caught up to the big times with the Lego movie and that whole universe. He's sort of a stealth co-director of that first one. Doesn't get the official credit, but he is assisting Phil Lord and Chris Miller with that. Executive producer on the sequel before finally getting the official director title for the Lego Batman movie, which is just one of the best Batman movies, full stop, Andrew. I don't know if we've had a chance to talk about Lego Batman on this podcast, but...
No, we have definitely not. But yeah, Lego Batman is wonderful if you haven't seen it, folks.
Yeah, genuinely great Batman movie, great Lego. It's just, it's wonderful. And he makes the transition to a live action director with the Tomorrow War, that Chris Pratt movie that was dumped on Amazon Prime that I think no one has seen. I think it's on Amazon Prime and has 0 streams. I don't think anyone has watched that movie. And then after that gets to do Renfield. So interesting sort of path that leads him here. I pass no judgment on the Tomorrow War because, I mean, obviously I haven't seen it because no one's seen it. So I don't, good, bad, I don't know. But looking at Renfield and knowing his work with the animation stuff, especially the Lego stuff, that kinetic, fun, visual style, like I think it's a very clean transition from animation to what we have here. I'm watching this movie. I don't know much about its production and background when I'm watching it, but almost immediately I'm like, this looks like it was based on a graphic novel. The way it's shot, how colorful it's ridiculously colorful. Every background is a splash of purple, red, green. It looks like a filmmaker trying to emulate the look of a comic book. It reminded me of like The Losers, when we covered that, they made it a point to have these big, strong color decisions in the background. This is like even more so. It's super colorful. So I'm not too surprised to see Robert Kirkman's involved. It's not a comic book. I mean, it's an original story, but they're certainly going for those colorful comic book vibes. That's the impression I got anyway.
Yeah, I liked it, and you're right. There's definitely stylistic choices that I really do like here, and that use of color is a big one. Like, they use it to differentiate from like the different points of Renfield's mood throughout the movie. Like, they use it to make these like locations kind of stand out and look unique, and it's very well done. I like it a lot.
Did you see the Tomorrow War, Andrew?
No, you just said no one has seen it.
Okay, just make sure.
No, I remember it coming out. I think there was even like trailers for it at theaters. Like, I feel like I saw trailers for it a lot.
No.
And then like suddenly it like disappeared. I mean, it came out and it disappeared. Like, it was one of those things that I think was going to be a studio release into theaters, but COVID, they just sold it off to a streamer. And yeah, it just didn't look. I don't know what it is about movies that debut on streaming platforms, but there's just something about them that just, I don't know what it is. Like, it's a strange vibe where like they just even kind of look different. They just like I don't know what it is. I couldn't even begin to describe it to you. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But anyway, I did not see Tomorrow War, and if I did, I have forgotten it.
All right, Andrew, I think it's time that we jump into the movie we have this week. Andrew, talk about all the positives, everything we like about Renfield. You ready?
Yeah.
Robert Montague Renfield has been serving Count Dracula for over a century, helping his master find fresh victims to feed on and moving him to a new town whenever necessary. After moving to New Orleans and joining a support group for victims of abusive relationships, Renfield finally gathers the courage to try to make a life for himself. But when Dracula learns that his familiar is no longer putting his needs first, he joins forces with a local gang to help enact his plan to rule the world once and for all. There's
Classic
some stuff
story
in there about a local gang of New Orleans, Lobos. But yeah, you get the gist. Classic story. I was about to say good versus evil, but really it's like evil versus proximity evil. I don't know. There's a lot of grays in there, but we'll break it down. We'll jump into it. Before we get to the scenes and story, though, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna talk about the cast of this film, starting with a high point: best casting, best performance of the movie. Because every episode we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the Call of Duty that they actually elevate the quality of the entire film with their performance, and we recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. So, Andrew, kick us off. Who's getting your Mark Strong Award for Renfield?
This is a tough decision. I'm not going to lie to you. I obviously there's a piece of your brain that immediately just wants to go, well, it's Nic Cage as Dracula. Like, that's obviously the selling point here, and it is the selling point in a lot of ways. But I am going to diverge. I know at this point I think I'm 2 for 2. Nic Cage getting the or 3 for 3 even, I think maybe, of Nic Cage getting the Mark Strong throughout Nic Cage month. 4 for 4? I don't know.
This is number 4. This week is number 4. Yeah, there's one more after this. It's 5 total. It's a long month, Andrew.
My bad. Because why did I think there was 5? 4 for 4. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I'm 4 for 4 giving Nick, or I'm 3 for 3 now.
There it is.
Giving Nic Cage the Mark Strong of this. But I feel like I got to go with my gut here, and I will be giving it to Nicholas Hoult as Robert Montague Renfield.
The other Nick.
The Mark Strong here. The other Nick. Nick and Nick. Not their first movie together either. But
hang on. Not their first movie together. Not their first movie together. I don't know it. What else have they been in together, Andrew?
The Weatherman.
Oh man, who's Nicholas Hoult in that movie?
He's his kid.
Huh. I gotta rewatch that.
20 years ago.
I really like that movie. I think I've stood up for it on this podcast before. It's pretty odd, but one of my favorite Nic Cage moments. He's a meteorologist there, and people like throw stuff at him on the street because like he'll say it's gonna rain and it doesn't. And at one point he just like loses it, and he's like, "It's just wind. It just blows everywhere. Like no one knows." And it's wonderful. Also, Michael Caine plays his dad, which sounds like weird casting, but it's actually a really nice performance. So yeah, big recommend there. But I had no idea it was Nicholas Hoult. I remember watching About a Boy like way after the fact, not back in the day. And I guess it might have even been like a COVID watch or something. Great movie. And it's little Nicholas Hoult. He's the titular boy in About a Boy. So yeah, that dude's been at it for.
He's like. He's like 13 in that movie because he's born in 89. So About a Boy, he's like 13. And so Weatherman, he's like 15 or 16. So like, yeah, he's been at this a long time. But they mentioned that like when some of the Renfield press tours, like when it was the two of them sitting together, they were like, yeah, back when we did Weatherman. And Nic Cage, of course, is like, even then I knew how much talent this young man had. Like, just obviously like, you're just like, did you, Nic Cage? Were you thinking back in 2005 that 20 years later we're going to do a Dracula movie and it's going to be cool? Well, because you did. But anyway, Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, I think, is a really, really great performance. I think it's very good casting too. Obviously, I think he plays like the sniveling kind of sidekick version of Renfield extremely well. Maybe not my favorite Renfield performance. That probably still belongs to the GOAT, Peter MacNicol, in Dracula Dead and Loving It. But there's a movie we got to find a way to cover one day. But I have fond memories of that movie for sure. But dude, if we do an episode with Leslie Nielsen, God, I'll probably talk for like 3 hours. That'll be terrible. But Nicholas Hoult, I think, does all facets of this character very well. Like when he has to be like the very cowering, scared, familiar, he does a really good job with it. When he stands up for himself, it feels authentic. When he has to get in on the action, Nicholas Hoult is not a small person, so it's actually kind of impressive that he can seem like meek and cowering, but then like can flip it around and just be like, oh yeah, this dude, like he's like my size. Like, so if he came charging at me, I'd probably be like, whoa, easy. But so I think he handles all the different layers of Renfield's performance throughout this movie very well as he changes his attitude, as he tries to gain more autonomy, he tries to break away from Dracula, he tries to start doing the right thing. I think he does a very good job with that. And I think he ends up being like the heart of this movie in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's named after him. So he ends up being a pretty important character. But Dracula does sit out large chunks of the first and second act. He kind of is just like in the background, like that obviously Dracula is like this driving force, but you just see him kind of looking very disheveled. And then there is the point where Dracula becomes more present. But in that regard, I think while Nicolas Cage's Dracula, I think, is great, and we'll talk about it, I think Nicholas Hoult is making this movie better with his performance. So in that regard, Nicholas Hoult as Robert Montague Renfield is getting my Mark Strong Award for Renfield.
Andrew, we rarely remember these things, but I happen to remember giving Nicholas Hoult the Mark Strong Award previously for his role as Beast.
Are you sure about that?
One of the X-Men movies we covered, yes. I mean,
are you
no,
sure?
there's no
Are you sure?
way.
Because there's no way to check.
There's no way to check, so I'm never 100% sure, but I feel pretty strongly about this. Because I remember saying something about him then that I'm going to repeat now, and that he is a very easy actor to take for granted. Because he's very good at everything I've ever seen him in. And he is almost always supporting cast, second to the main. I mean, like in the X-Men movies, he's second to Charles Xavier. Fury Road, he's obviously not the main character. He's the titular character here. It has more screen time than Nic Cage, but most people still think of Nic Cage first when they think of this movie. He's just sort of always that not quite leading man, but he crushed it. Again, everything I've seen him in, he's just so good. And this is a role he's sort of been circling this same type of role for a long time. I know him from a friend of the show, my wife. Her favorite rom-com is Warm Bodies, where he plays the zombie. My favorite rom-com is My Boyfriend's Back, for the record. But he's very good in that. He plays a zombie that falls in love. It's a romantic comedy about a zombie. And I see a lot of that here because he's got the pale skin. He's undead. Renfield's a zombie in this movie in like the classic sense of the term, right?
Right.
And then I even see a little bit of his Fury Road character because he is blindly serving a master, and then he finally starts to second guess that. So, again, pale skin, that seems to be a running thing. And of course, not long after this movie, he's in Nosferatu, where he's Andrew, help me out here, basically playing the same character. You know, Nosferatu is an unauthorized retelling of Dracula, so the names are changed. I think in the Universal movie, they combined two characters for the Renfield character, which is what he's playing here. But in Nosferatu, they separate those characters out, so the character he's playing isn't technically Renfield, but he's the one that visits Dracula's castle, so he's basically Renfield. He's basically playing the same character in Nosferatu, which is, of course, a extremely serious telling of the story, whereas this one is a goofy sort of sequel.
Okay,
but it's pretty funny.
Hold up a little bit.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So in Nosferatu, he is playing essentially the character who is Jonathan Harker, who in this movie, so Harker and Renfield are not the same character. They are not. But
no, but in the Universal movie, don't they combine those two characters? Like, I don't think there's two separate characters.
Do. But then in Nosferatu, I don't think it's split either.
Yeah, because there's the guy that's the old guy that sends him that ends up being under the spell of Nosferatu. That's Renfield, right? Or the Renfield avatar.
Yeah. So hold up. Now I'm all confused. You've messed with my brain.
Andrew, they will come for us on YouTube if we don't get this right now.
I know they will. So hold on.
I think it's like this. In the book, there's two real estate guys. One that
the 1931 movie. The 1931 movie has John Harker and Renfield in the cast, so they are separate characters in the Bela Lugosi Dracula, which I think is why I'm getting messed up. But in Nosferatu,
and is it Harker that goes to the castle?
It is Harker that goes to the castle, but Renfield is already his servant, basically.
I don't know. He plays a similar role. Whether or not it's the exact same is kind of beyond the point. It's just kind of funny that he's in this goofy telling and Nosferatu, yeah?
Right, which is the super serious version that follows it. Which, for those of you who don't know, Nosferatu is a movie that was an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula. The Stoker estate sues over the copyright, and a court ruling literally said that all copies of Nosferatu needed to be destroyed. Basically, the story of Nosferatu is Dracula, and when pressed on it, they had no leg to stand on. Like they obviously claimed that like changing his name to Count Orlok and calling him Thomas Hutter instead of Jonathan Harker, and like doing all of those things, like it's basically that problem of it was Dracula. And so they got sued, and they got said that all the copies needed to be destroyed. Now, thankfully, that, they didn't get all of them. So, obviously, the movie, I think, is just now obviously just seen as an adaptation of Dracula, and I think, obviously, just the right. So it's probably public domain now, I would imagine.
Pretty sure, yeah.
But,
Dracula and Nosferatu.
Well, Dracula for sure, because Dracula was published even before. But, anyway, yeah, so No, so it is interesting to me that when Robert Eggers went to make a Dracula movie, he specifically was like, I want to remake Nosferatu, and didn't make a Dracula movie. I just thought that was interesting. But anyway, yes, Nicholas Hoult is in both, literally back-to-back years. This was 23, Nosferatu was 24, playing, I don't know, Renfield is not Harker. Like, Renfield is not Harker in the book. He's not Renfield. Harker is separate in there, so doesn't really matter. If you had a nickel for every time Nicholas Hoult played a character in the original Dracula novel, you'd have 2 nickels, which is weird that it happened twice. Not a lot, but because I think Renfield is supposed to be his employer in most versions, but most of the books, most of the movies and books, he's in an asylum because he's been driven crazy. But it's, I'm sure aspects of it get switched around, but no, I do think they are separate characters.
Andrew, I like Nicholas Hoult a lot. I'm glad you're giving him the Mark Strong Award. I've like I said, I've given one previously. I think no way to check, but I've got to go with Nic Cage on this one. I'm going with Nicolas Cage as Dracula for the Mark Strong Award. He's doing a sort of screen time wise. If you were to like, do that thing where you actually clock how much they're actually on screen, you might be surprised by how little it is. It's almost like Michael Keaton in Beetlejuice. Like, Beetlejuice isn't actually on screen very much in that movie, but his presence is felt throughout. And when he's not on screen, you're sort of anticipating the next time that he has a big scene. I feel that way about having Nicolas Cage as Dracula. And I think this is just fun casting in so many ways. It's almost like fun stunt casting. Like, you just hear that. Nic Cage as Dracula. Like, man, I can't wait to see what he does with that. And then the fact that they're so basing this on the Universal movie, on Bela Lugosi. I mean, you wouldn't think, hey, does Nic Cage like Bela Lugosi? You wouldn't really think twice about it. But when you see him like in the makeup, it's like, man, that's actually a lot closer than I would have imagined. It's a role that, from interviews and stuff, Nic Cage seems to have taken very seriously, which he kind of seems to take every role very seriously. But I just love what he's doing here. He's sort of giving us everything. He's giving us those classic Dracula vibes, but he's also a little manic Nic Cage. He brings a lot of comedy to this without being
Like a parody.
Without being parody. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I was going to say goofy, but it is kind of goofy, but yeah, not parody. Like, there's scenes where he's very funny as Dracula, but they don't do the potentially like cringe thing of having him talk like with modern slang or something. Like, haha, isn't it funny? Right. This old Dracula's saying
Riz.
Riz. Yeah, they avoid that pitfall, but still, like, his over the top sarcasm and stuff is there and very funny. I love the look. I love the teeth. It just looks like he's having an absolute blast in this movie, which is always great to see. I love the voice that he goes with. I mean, it's so funny to watch this right after Vampire's Kiss. This is going to sound odd, and it's not going to make sense to anybody, but I thought it, and I got to say it. In Vampire's Kiss, he reminded me a bit of Dr. Evil. Just the way that he talked, like his we debated, is it like yuppie talk? Is it Transylvania? But, he had this, again, Dr. Evil vibes. There were times here where I'm like, oh, this is like the Austin Powers to Vampire's Kiss Michael Myers, or Vampire's Kiss Dr. Evil, because he's got so much more swagger and confidence and coolness, and he's, thinks himself a god, as he says outright here. And it's really cool. It's everything I hoped for when I heard, Nic Cage is playing Dracula. Like, it did not disappoint, and I had very high expectations. He's the reason you walk into the movie, and for me, for hitting those high expectations, I gotta give him the old Mark Strong Award.
Obviously, I hoped you'd go this direction, because I do agree that this is a great performance. Like you said, you pretty much covered all the bases there. I don't feel the need to recover it too much, and we've obviously talked about Nic Cage a lot, but he is doing, in my mind, like you said, exactly what you would want Nic Cage's Dracula to be. This is, he's not going for some like weird understated performance. He's obviously trying to invoke that classic Dracula. Obviously, there's a modern setting here that is impacting that a little bit, but by and large, he's creating exactly what you want out of Nic Cage as Dracula. They actually do recreate some sequences from the original film. They've got that scene where they meet.
At the base of the stairs. It was so cool because they actually inserted them into footage into the Universal movie, which is super cool.
It's just cool that they're going for that. So this actually makes the movie a quasi sequel to Dracula, because the implication seems to be that these are the same characters from that moment. Obviously, and there's even archive footage of what is their names? Helen Chandler and Edward Van Sloan as Mina Seward, eventually Harker, and Van Helsing, because they show another clip from that period of time. And so it's just an interesting choice. They just certainly didn't have to do that. I just thought it was pretty cool. But in that moment, you get Nicolas Cage, even briefly, as Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And he, like you said, he doesn't look out of place at all. He looks like it looks completely right. So Nic Cage's Dracula here is, like you said, exactly what you want. It's exactly what you're expecting. And I don't know, like you said, if you came out of this being like, I wanted more out of Nic Cage's Dracula, I just think you don't like joy at that point.
It's funny because it is a pseudo sequel. Like, they make that line very clear, but you just got to ignore the end. If you know how that movie ends, you just kind of ignore that and just imagine they continued on. It's great. Now,
Dracula's never come back from the dead, so that you're absolutely correct.
These two, super strong performances, but this movie has a hell of a cast. I did not know Awkwafina was in it until I started watching it, or I didn't remember, maybe from marketing, but she plays Officer Rebecca Quincy. There's this whole side plot with a gang in New Orleans that gets tied up into their schemes, and she's an officer trying to bring down this gang. It becomes very clear that there's a lot of corrupt people in the police department, which is why it's been so hard to bring them down, get charges to stick. This gang is also responsible for the death of her father. We get this whole tragic backstory for her character. Her sister works for the FBI. It's all in there and told pretty quickly, but this whole side plot is not even in my synopsis I read earlier, but I just want to say, I love Awkwafina and everything I've seen her in, whether it's Crazy Rich Asians, or Shang-Chi, or even Raya the Last Dragon I really liked. I think she's absolutely hilarious, and this is no exception. Even though she's got to do some sort of heavy lifting at times, she's not always being a comedic character, but she is very funny whenever she is. It feels almost, I don't know, 2023 wasn't that long ago. It feels like she's bigger than being the third, fourth lead of this movie, but again, I'm happy to see her because I love Awkwafina.
Yeah, I thought it's odd that she almost has to be like the straight character to the insanity of the film at times. So she needs to play it seriously for a lot of this. And don't get me wrong, she finds moments, like obviously once the crux of the plot becomes apparent that this is dealing with Dracula and vampires and all sorts of stuff, she gets plenty of moments to like...
Or anytime she has to address Kevin.
Yes. But
or Kyle. Kyle. Is it Kyle?
Yes. I was like,
Damn.
Who's Kevin?
Sorry.
I was like, I'm just gonna power through this. Yeah, so it's odd because I know her style of humor is not for everyone, or just the general way that her stand-up style, all that. I know that there's detractors, but it's odd that this performance is a bit against the grain of those. And that, like I said, she, for the first like half of this movie, she's a pretty serious character. Largely, she's a police officer. Her father was killed by these corrupt crime family members. She's kind of trying to right the wrongs, and she's struggling to do it because she's basically realizing that everybody in this town has been bought. So it's a interesting change of pace. But then, as the vampire insanity reveals itself, she gets a chance to kind of lean into the extremes. and have a little bit of fun with it. I like the scene where she's like, everyone will always say, "Oh, I've seen worse," and she's like, "What I've seen today will always be the I've seen worse," which is just a perfect delivery by her. But otherwise, yeah, I think she's up to the task. But this is definitely a different kind of performance. But she still gets a chance to be funny. Obviously, you've got her in the movie. You've got to have her lean into her strengths. But it is a fun performance a lot, and I think she plays really well off of Nicholas Hoult as well.
And the hits keep coming. We have Ben Schwartz as Tedward Lobo. He is
Tedward.
That's what I said. Oh,
I know. It's just ridiculous.
He is the son of the matriarch of the crime family, trying to sort of earn his place as the future leader. He's a bit of a screw up, but trying to show that he can handle the job. Ben Schwartz is hilarious, and the guy that I think is just hilarious in everything I've ever seen him in, probably starting with Parks and Rec, first thing I saw him in. Of course, now probably most known as the voice of Sonic, which is funny to think about as he curses his way through this movie, that it's Sonic's voice coming out of this very foul-mouthed man. But he's funny, and again, it seems like he's grown beyond this part, because he seems like such a big name these days. But again, happy to see him here. I think there's just something innately, I don't know, it's just perfect casting, because he's got all the tattoos and stuff, a slicked back hair, and but on paper he looks the part of like a criminal, but he's such just an innate, has that douchebag energy that just can't help but come through.
Yeah,
and it's funny. It's very funny.
It is funny. Ben Schwartz is extremely funny. Like, and I mean, what a career this guy's got at this point. Because even just on a voice acting side, he's Sonic the Hedgehog. He got to do Dewey on DuckTales, and he got to do Leo on Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, so he's gotten to be 3 pretty iconic characters in varying forms. He's obviously contributed voices to a whole lot of different stuff. He does voices on Invincible. He's got all sorts of appearances. Obviously, Parks and Recreation, possibly the thing that he's brought him to prominence, I suppose. Or at least made people aware of him, I guess. Liz and I have actually seen him live twice. He does improv comedy with a group of people every time, but it's literally like they ask the audience for 3 stories, and then those 3 stories are like their source for everything they do. And then after that, they don't film it. They ask you not to film it, and then it's over after that. That show is gone forever. So it's improv in the truest sense of the term. So just a very talented individual. But obviously the sniveling, not quite ready for primetime crime boss that he's playing here is right up his alley. It's like, obviously there's pieces of Jean-Ralphio here of like just the kind of spoiled Nepo baby type thing.
Yes.
Like the famous parent that he's kind of living in the shadow of, obviously with a lot more of a foul mouth. Obviously just the way he sucks up to Dracula, even stuff like that. It all works, and it's right in his wheelhouse. Obviously making him weirdly tattooed was strange, but roll with it.
And that's really our main players, Andrew. There's one more I want to shout out. I mentioned the matriarch of the crime family. That is going to be the character of Bella Francesca Lobo. Gotta wonder the inspiration for that name. Played by Shohreh Aghdashloo, a actress that I didn't know if I was familiar with until I heard her speak. And I was like, oh, I know her. I'm actually... I think I mentioned I've been watching Daredevil Born Again, and I realized I hadn't seen all the Netflix stuff, so I'm watching The Punisher right now, and she's in that. So, like, I've been watching her almost every week now. She plays one of the characters' moms, and it's just such a distinct voice that sounds like, respectfully, it's just gonna go at any second. Like, at any point, it just sounds like, oh, and then she can never speak again because the last vocal cord snapped or whatever. It sounds so strange. I don't know if it's cigarettes or what, but it's something that you don't soon forget. But an intimidating woman.
There's a line in have you ever seen Venture Brothers?
I haven't. It sounds like a show I would like from what I've heard about it. But
There's a character on the show whose name is Dr. Girlfriend, and she's the girlfriend, eventually wife of this character, the Monarch. But one of the jokes of the character is that she has a deep, deep voice. Like, essentially sounds like what you would expect most men to sound like. But there's a point where she speaks, and somebody who's never heard her speak before goes, "That's a voice. Do you smoke cigarettes or do you eat them?" And that's kind of a little bit how I feel about her voice here.
Yes.
Just that it's pretty deep. But it's funny. I knew that name, and I wasn't sure why either. I had the same kind of thing of that voice. And she's been in tons of different movies over the years. She was actually technically alum of the show. She's Dr. Kavita Rao in X-Men: The Last Stand.
Okay, yeah.
But been on a bunch of other things throughout the years. But she is one of the 3 different women that comprised the voice of Gozer the Gozerian in Ghostbusters Afterlife. And genuinely hearing her voice here, I hear it now. Like there's a low piece of Gozer's voice when they speak in that movie, which is not a lot, mind you. Gozer doesn't talk a whole lot. But it's definitely noticeable. Gozer was physically played in that movie by Olivia Wilde, who also contributed to the voice. But yeah, that low timbre is unmistakable, as you said. And looking back through, and like I said, looking through her filmography, she's everywhere. She was apparently also just recently in The Penguin. She was also apparently in Creature Commandos. So there's some stuff I apparently need to go watch. But yeah, she's here as the matriarch of this crime family, and it's good stuff.
It's good stuff, Andrew. And speaking of good stuff, it's time that we talk about the scenes of this movie. And we're going to start with the best scene of the film, or at least our personal favorite. So, Andrew, in your opinion, when is this movie firing on all cylinders, and what is the best scene in Renfield?
To me, it's when Renfield overcomes Dracula for the final time. It is kind of the whole premise of the movie to this point. We've gotten plenty of insane action to this point between Dracula just tearing into people, Renfield fighting people off. But, you know, the whole movie is building to that final Renfield-Dracula fight. And this thing is brutal, it's cool, and it's empowering. And obviously, it's the big moment that Renfield gets to break away from Dracula. It's a cool, brutal fight. Like, he's about to take out Awkwafina. And like he pulls out his teeth, and she kind of covertly, inadvertently gets Nicholas Holt's Renfield revived, who then jumps up and like stabs Dracula's fangs through his hands, but then like rips them out, which I was like,
so cool,
brutal. I was like, awesome. And then they just start having their fight, and it literally ends with like Renfield punching this dude in the face until he can't Oh, excuse me. I almost dropped the F-bomb there. Just punching him in the face until he can't move. And then, obviously, there's one last moment where Dracula kind of tries to get the upper hand, but then he gets caught in a magic circle made of cocaine. A story as old as time. Watch the 1980s television movie Cocaine, One Man's Seduction for more. But it's a great scene. I like it a lot. Like you said, it's kind of the culmination of the film to this point, having these two face off. Just you have the added piece that he rips out Dracula's fangs, which is just an awesome visual. And then as he's beating Dracula with his fangs still in his hands, you're just like, that's awesome. You're like, that's cool. How come nobody thought of that? How come nobody thought of that before?
I know critics that are like, oh, they didn't really capitalize on the premise. Like, he's punching his eye out with his own fang. Like, it's so
like,
cool.
What more do you want? Well, I can't help but notice he didn't punch out both eyes with his fangs. If you guys noticed, he had 2 fangs in his hands, and it's like, you hate joy. But anyway, I like this. It's Renfield kind of reclaiming himself in a way. Obviously, he feels like he's lost himself to Dracula at this point for a long time, and this is him coming back, taking back his life, taking back his individuality, and trying to banish the evil of Dracula from the world forever, which they do by cutting him into bits and then putting him into ice cube trays that they then fill with cement and then dump into a drain.
The only thing I don't like about that, Andrew, is they dump all the cubes down one drain. Did that bother you?
In the
Spread
sense
them
that,
out.
like,
Spread them out
why
around the
don't you
world.
spread them out. But well, then you got to go around the world to do that. But just put them into the river.
It's
and
kinda
they're
worth
eventually
it.
going to disperse. They'll get caught in the current, man.
Okay, sure.
And you know,
I'm saying I wouldn't
you
take
know,
any chances. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't either. But at the same time, like, and he even says at the end, he's like, could he come back from this? Yeah, but it's going to take him a really long time. But I like the scene a lot. Like I said, it's Nicholas Hoult, it's Renfield taking back his life and ridding the world of the evil of Dracula. Hopefully this time for good. Awkwafina gets involved. She's the one that makes the cocaine prison. Again, one man seduction, folks. But cocaine's a prison for everyone, folks. Seek if you need assistance. Local assistance hotlines are available. But it works. I like it. It's fun to watch. Obviously the cocaine thing is just a weird little, because it's the powder that's hanging around. She uses it to make the cage circle. There it is. The cage of cocaine.
Hey, it took you 2 minutes. What you got there?
There it is. Hey, not like you got there first, jerk. But anyway, I like it. It's fun. It's a great way to cap off the movie.
Yeah, it's an absolute blast. I mean, the movie is just full tilt here. We've had so many action scenes that are like so bloody. I was not. I don't know what I didn't know. I guess I didn't know exactly what to expect from this movie. Like a fun performance from Nic Cage, I expected their fun relationship, but the violence, the over the top violence, and not even body horror because it's so stylized, but just gore, I guess you can call it gore, was wild. And it gets this final scene. It's like, how are they gonna top everything that we've seen so far? And it's just a wild fight. And I really love, they capture him in that, what did you call it? Cage, cocaine cage.
Cocaine cage. There you go.
Cocaine cage. There it is. And they just like look at all the medieval type weapons around because they're in the Lobos headquarters, and like, what's gonna happen, and they just hit him like a piñata, and it's wonderful. It's just so much fun. This movie's a blast, dude. I had so much fun with this. It was so good. For my favorite scene, I love all the action scenes. We're gonna talk about all of them because I think they're all great. But I want to highlight a non-action scene. It's my favorite interaction between the two Nicks, between Nicholas Hoult and Nic Cage, and it is whenever Dracula finds out that Nicholas Hoult, instead of bringing him innocent lives, has been protecting innocent people and trying to live a life on his own. So Dracula sneaks in to Renfield's apartment, and a bit that I love, because Renfield comes home, opens the door, and Dracula's already there inside of his house. And thinking, how'd they enter my home without being invited? He looks down at his mat that says, "Welcome, come on in," and just goes, ah. The mat invited him in. Now, great joke, Andrew. But I'm going to take this time to say, I had never heard this thing about vampires that they can only enter if they've been invited, literally until the movie Let the Right One In. Like, I watched that movie, and that, vampire rule is a big part of it. And I was like, is this a weird rule to make up for vampires? I never heard it before. I think Anne Rice's Vampires is probably my main source of vampire things, and that wasn't, as far as I know, that's not a rule in her universe. So, Andrew, is this a rule that you've been very familiar with for vampires, or do you know where it comes from?
Yeah, it's just an old thing. Like, What We Do in the Shadows, the original film, one of the jokes of that film is they have to keep getting they have to have people invite them in, and the joke is the guy's really bad at it. So, like, he keeps trying to have people invite him inside, but he's just off-putting, so they don't. So like he comes up to the door and he's like just kind of a creep, and they're like, no thanks, they just close the door. But Yeah, it's been a thing. Like you can't enter, and I think it's to do with like I don't know if it's probably to do with the fact that they're considered unholy technically, but
I mean, it's awfully silly. Like this all powerful being can't.
Chris, I don't know if you look at everything about a Dracula on paper, about a Dracula. They're called Draculas, not vampires. If you wrote all of the vampire lore throughout history on a single sheet of paper, you're probably going to mark half of those things as this is pretty silly.
Yeah, I mean, garlic is delicious, so the idea of being repelled by it is indeed
like the
silly.
cross always made sense because again, we're getting back to like the unholy thing. So
Sure.
like something holy water. The cross.
Sunlight
those
is
types of
just a
things.
fun rule, you know.
Why? Why sunlight?
I don't know. Why does moonlight not hurt? Because it's still sunlight. All right, anyway.
I ever tell you my pitch for a weird werewolf movie?
Hit me with it. Are you sure you want to give this away for free?
You haven't written the script yet, so no.
Okay.
I'm fine. So I had a joke about doing like the vibe. The vibe that I want the movie to go for is like Escape from New York-esque type thing. But envision, if you will, it's on a planet with like 30 moons.
Is there a full moon every night?
No.
No? Okay.
There is a full moon every night, but it is only on the night that all of the moons are full. And they turn into like crazy super werewolves. And it only lasts for like 47 minutes because that's as long as it's there. So I have to figure out the lore of how vampires got to this weird planet, or werewolves got to this weird planet. But yeah, that's the joke. Because I always wondered, this is a thing that I've always been curious about.
Okay.
So werewolves turn into a werewolf on a full moon.
Right.
But our planet only has one moon. So it's easy enough to be like, well, yeah, it's a full moon. But like, I asked that question to myself once of just like, well, what if a planet has 3 moons? Like, what is it about the moon being full that makes them turn into a werewolf? And I realized, looking at the history of werewolves, I can make it whatever I want to be because everybody else does. I can just make up whatever lore I want. So the premise I'm going with is that all of the moons have to be full to trigger the transformation.
That's not possible, though. That's not possible, right?
What's not possible?
Well, a moon is... What makes a moon... Okay, I'm trying to think of what makes a moon full, and I realize I'm stepping into territory that I just don't understand well enough. But I feel like the sun can't fully light the visible part of a moon on 30 different moons simultaneously if they're in different orbits around the planet.
That's why it only happens every, 1,000 years for 30 minutes. Because the moons are all at different orbits around the planet.
And they're all fully lit by the sun?
Well, the sun will light them all at some point. Because the reason a moon is full is that basically the Earth is between the sun and the moon. Perfectly. Like the sun is on one side, the moon is directly on the other side, right across from it. Earth is in the middle. That way, when the sun goes down, the moon appears completely full because there's no interference from the sun, basically. So
we are just begging for YouTube corrections right now.
We are. So the premise of this, because again, Chris, you need to understand, this is science fiction and it's fake.
Give me whatever you want. Got it. But okay, so 30 moons. Simply, if one moon is full, they do not become a werewolf, or they become a regular werewolf.
Now they will look back and see that like when one moon was full, maybe there was a couple of reports of like increased aggression. And then like, if 4 moons were full, they were going to see that like as more moons got full, there were tendencies that appeared. But when all of the moons are full, which is only going to be for like an extremely short amount of time, given the fact that there are so many and that the position has to be perfect. The idea is that even if there are 30 things orbiting a planet, at some point, using the rule of numbers, they will all eventually be in the right place at least once to do this. And then you get weird super werewolves because they're fueled by 30 moons instead of 1.
Andrew?
You've heard dumber ideas. I know you have.
Sounds fun. I like it. I do like just the simple concept of what if there's more than one moon. Very good. You're right. All these rules and superstitions on these characters are quite dumb. But I love this scene between Dracula and Renfield because Dracula knows what Renfield's been up to, but Renfield's trying to play it cool. He's like, oh, Dracula, I was on my way, and Dracula's just super catty right here. He's like, oh, you were on your way. Oh, yeah, just nodding along emphatically as Renfield, spills all these excuses before Dracula finally calls him out on it. And then they get into really the crux of their relationship. Renfield's been going to these support groups. He feels like Dracula is a narcissist, and he holds up a book to him as if it's a Bible. And Dracula's just like, what is this? And it's just
confused.
It's how to deal with a narcissist. And he's reading tips on how to talk to him. And it's very good. I mean, Dracula does like classic, again, abusive, toxic relationship stuff. He tries to spin it on him, make it sound like Dracula's the real victim, and Renfield actually took advantage of him with a real estate deal going way back in their relationship, and just totally gaslighting him. And it's just such a funny way to look at the relationship between these two characters and really examine it like this. And this scene gets to the heart of it, and I think it's the most fun we get from Nic Cage as Dracula. Like, as much as I love like his fight scenes and just his look and flying around and being badass, he really gets to have the most personality here. And then Nick Holt as Renfield. This is his first time that he truly tries to stand up to him, mostly unsuccessfully. But it really just gets to the heart of what makes this movie special. So I want to highlight this scene here as my favorite.
I think this is a good pick. It was definitely on my list of scenes that stood out to me. This is when Dracula is kind of sort of mostly back to his final, his normal appearance after being pretty closely exterminated earlier in the film. And just, the chemistry between the two of them, the way they play back and forth, it works really, really well. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Nicholas Hoult is like a larger physical person than Nic Cage is, but he still feels so small in parts of the scene compared to Nic Cage, who just brings that presence.
Solely on this movie, I think Nick Holt is 6'7" and Awkwafina is 4'2".
Yeah,
Whenever they're on screen together, it's like it's got to be like a wide shot to get them both. It's wild.
Yeah, like it'd be that thing where they like zoom out and you see that Nick Holt's doing that like split leg thing that WWE guy used to do to be shorter. But
sick reference, Andrew.
But this is a great scene. Like I said, the play back forth, and like Dracula, like Nic Cage gets to like dig into some stuff here. He gets to like cut deep into Renfield's character, and I think it's very, very effective. And it kind of ends on that notion of like Dracula basically telling him, "Oh, you got this from a support group," and he basically tells him in no uncertain terms, "I'm about to go kill all of them," and and it's very, very good. It's an excellent pick,
and it leads right into that next scene. Nicholas Hoult, Renfield, rushes over to the support group. And he's trying to warn them, trying to get him out of there. They don't understand. They hear a knock at the door, and the support group leader says, you here for the meeting? Well, come on in. Inviting him in. Dracula comes in. And I like this scene a lot, too, because this is like stakes get kind of real here. Like, this movie has had a lot of violence and deaths, but it's all been, like, just random, faceless, evil people mostly getting killed in very fun ways, and you're just having fun with it. But this, like, support group, these are people that we've seen a few times in the movie. We know they are victims. They're in a bad place. They are good people that Renfield's trying to help. Dracula's here. How's Renfield going to save them? What's he going to do? And the answer is Dracula just kills them all. And, like, it's really brutal. Like, this is the first time in the movie, maybe the only time in the movie, where the violence isn't fun. It's it has some weight to it. It has some stakes. It has some meaning. And I love the way that it is presented, because Dracula just knocks Renfield across the room, and in the time it takes him to fly across the room, Dracula slays every single person there. Like, it's all played out in slow motion. You have a shot of Renfield flying through the air, shot of Dracula just ripping a throat out, and he does them one by one before sucking the blood of the leader at the end. And it's kind of a bummer. It's surprisingly effective. Again, for how cavalier the movie's been with death so far, they managed to make this one have some impact.
I agree. It works extremely well. Like the way they do that scene, you talk about like you talk again about like directorial choices and like, you know, how you're going to stage things, but like him shoving Renfield away and then like showing Renfield like flying back in slow motion while Dracula just like mauls these people while Renfield is literally powerless to do anything given that he is flying through the air. It's just extremely effective. And like you said, obviously you know these people are struggling and you know that Nicholas Hoult wants to help them now. And now and it's also, in a way, it is proving kind of Dracula's point, at least from that, like, kind of, you know, toxic relationship standpoint of, like, you know, in that moment, Renfield is like, I did kill these people because I led Dracula here, and it's my fault. And now it's not his fault. Obviously, you know, Dracula is a grown man who didn't have to kill these people. It's not like that was his only option. But in that moment,
Dracula is a grown man is such a funny sentence.
So, but on Nicholas Holt's face as he's flying through the air, you see that pain that he feels in that moment, and it's very effective. This is a brutal scene. It's a little difficult to watch even when you're just like watching him like maul these people. You're just like, oh no. Now this does get a little undone later in the film. We get a little bit of a happy ending for these characters, but we do get to leave it on a funny little one note there. But in the moment, it is very effective. You get a lot of emotion from Nicholas Hoult. You get to see Nic Cage's Dracula kind of unchained, untold, if you will.
I knew it.
So you get to kind of see Nic Cage's Dracula unleash. And, you know, if you've been waiting for that to happen throughout the movie, here it is. So it's a very effective scene, and it punctuates that previous scene in a really good way.
Yeah, it's established that Dracula's blood can heal others. We see him heal Renfield several times, and it's a plot point throughout. And it's eventually Dracula's blood that brings all these people back to life, and that's fun. I do like the leader is like, oh, well, thank you for using Dracula blood to bring us back to life, and he mentions that they've seen things that other people will never see, and things they'll never forget. They know things they can never unknow, and he seems a bit haunted by however long that time period was that he was dead before coming back. It's a fun little note to end on. Now, Andrew, I don't know if I've ever explicitly heard that Dracula blood can heal others, but I had no problem going along with that. That kind of just fits in with vampire lore for me, whether or not it's been established before. But something that I've never heard before is the concept of Renfield eating bugs to gain temporary superpowers. And this movie smartly just skips over a lot of the lore. They're like, you know vampires, you know Dracula, you know the story, let's just go. And I like that a lot. And like the opening minutes of the movie is kind of catching up really, really fast. And it's even during this part that he's like, oh yeah, and I eat bugs to have super strength. Anyway, and it's mentioned like maybe one at a time. Andrew, is this original to this movie? Is this just a weird thing they threw in here? Or do you know if this existed before?
The idea of Renfield eating bugs is not new, and I think that's kind of where this starts. Like, there's a gag in Dracula Dead and Loving It, I don't know if you remember it, but like, that Renfield prefers to eat bugs. Literally at a table with tons of real food, he sees a bug, and he eats the bug instead. And, you know, there's a whole big scene where he's in a moment where he's in a scene with Harvey Korman, and, you know, he literally grabs a bug and eats it, and Harvey Korman's like, wait, what was that? What'd you just do there? And he's like, oh, there's something on the table, and I ate it. And he's like, yeah, what was it? What was it? What did you eat this there? And he's like, it was a raspberry. He's like, I didn't see any raspberries. He's like, it was a bug. And he's like, it was not. And he's like, I can see its legs sticking out of your mouth. It's a bug. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, it's not. So
I clearly need to watch Dracula Dead and Loving It again. I watched it as a kid. The scene, the only gag I remember from that movie now is Leslie Nielsen's Dracula is like dancing with a woman, and he bends her over, you know, as you do when you're doing a ballroom dance, and he looks over, and his shadow, which has like a personality of his own, is like aggressively humping the woman that he's dancing with. That was the funniest thing to me when I was 6 or whatever I watched that. So I gotta watch that again.
it is so the idea of Renfield like eating bugs and rats and stuff while he's in the asylum, like that's obviously a thing that's real. I think they just used that as kind of a way to be like, oh, and by the way, as part of, because in the original Dracula, like he's like, if you serve me, I will grant you like immortality and all of that. And so I think that it's definitely I think so. I think the bugs and the rats are meant to be like Dracula's like, oh, that's what keep you immortal if you serve me. But them giving him powers, I think that's it. I would assume it's original to this, but if it's not original to this, it is not original to Dracula itself, I don't think.
Okay, fair enough. Makes sense. Maybe the all said and told, the bloodiest, goriest, whatever you want to call it, fight scene is at the apartments. Whenever the Lobos are hunting down Renfield and Aquafina because they're all corrupt cops, and the Lobos been sent to take both of these characters out. And this is when Renfield is desperately looking for bugs to eat, ends up eating like a whole ant farm. He gets superpowered. And him and Aquafina dispatch this group of Lobos and cops. And it's just the most over-the-top kills of the movie. And the first time I make a note that's like, this is like straight up Mortal Kombat vibes. There's a time when he grabs this dude by both of his arms, kicks him in the chest, and his body flies off while his arms detach, and he's left holding onto his arms. He uses his arms to beat up other people. It is quite literally a fatality found in Mortal Kombat. I mean, he's just, he'll kick somebody and their head straight up explodes. Like, the body physics.
You get an actual fatality later, but yes.
The X-ray?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, ever since Mortal Kombat 9, there's been this thing called X-ray moves, where a character hits another character and it zooms in, slow-mo, you see their bones break. They do that exact gag here. And in this one, it causes Ben Schwartz to diarrhea and vomit at the same time. It's pretty funny. But this apartment fight is just so insanely over the top. He rips someone's face off, quite literally. Is that perhaps a Nic Cage reference? Who knows? But it's this is the stuff that I did not know going into this movie. I had no idea it would be this wildly violent. I'm trying to think of like what it reminded me of. I mean, the blood, it was over the top, sort of like in a Kill Bill kind of way, but it reminded me of maybe Shoot 'em Up. I was getting kind of those vibes with how insanely stylized it is, but the way the body is just so easily dismembered or exploded, I don't know exactly what it reminded me of, but I loved the heightened violence. I mean, if all of the stuff was like realistic looking, it would be hard to stomach and change the tone entirely, but it's always coming from a place of like, this is just an absolute blast.
Oh yeah, and I agree completely. I think this is a movie that I think also, like we talked about, like Con Air is obviously a movie where we say everybody understands the assignment. I think this leans in that direction, where like everybody knows the kind of movie this is going for, and so when you have these over-the-top action sequences, the director is on the right page of like, okay, this is going to be brutal, but we're going to find a way to make this as over-the-top to the point that it's, it knows exactly what it is. And so it's over the top, it's ridiculous, it's insane, but it's never trying to be anything else. And obviously it's playing it for comedy to an extent, because the idea is these are all very bad people. So this scene hits differently than like the support group one does. It's like the support group one, you're like horrified because these are people that Renfield cares about, and Dracula dispatches them with no problem. But with this sequence, you're obviously given the context that these are all bad people. So when Renfield and Rebecca take these people out in increasingly depraved and violent ways, there's a catharsis almost that, we're finally seeing bad things happen to bad people. And then just the way they play it, like I said, at the end, like he's standing on this pile of bodies and he like holds his hand up for her to like jump down and so they can move on to the next thing. And it's just played perfectly. It works really, really well.
The scene right before that, I mean, there's this budding romance of sorts with Renfield and Rebecca, but to me, it's really more like Rebecca's the first person to like see him as a person and give him the confidence to stand up to Dracula. It's much less about a meet cute or whatever. But I love the scene of them two in the apartment where, I mean, I don't know, the setup for this doesn't really matter, but she's been shot, he was arrested, and she doesn't trust him because she really sees him as a murderer, and he's got to explain who Dracula is. But we just get a lot of good chemistry between the two of them, and it's my favorite Awkwafina moment of the movie where she's like blaming him. She's like, "You're the reason, we're in so much trouble." And he says, "Maybe you're in trouble because you have unresolved anger issues." She immediately goes, "What?" I can't even, Awkwafina has a pretty distinct raspy voice, but she just so effortlessly like screams that with perfect comedic timing. It really caught me off guard, but I thought it was quite funny.
What? Yeah, it's perfect. But I have always I think this is just I think it's just a very this is also a very good scene. Like I said, the Awkwafina Nicholas Hoult chemistry here I think is really, really good. And this is like the best scene I think they get in the whole movie, and it is very, very good. You don't want any of the murder cookies?
Yeah, I don't know which ones or what did she call it? She was
What
like,
makes
I don't
them the murder cookies.
those, the opening, the Universal style flashback scenes as he's giving the exposition in the beginning is really cool, and they actually inserted these characters into Universal footage, like we said earlier. But the first scene we see is actually my favorite scene from Universal's Dracula. They don't quite get to the part that's my favorite, but I may have found a way to talk about this on podcast before, but I'll go and repeat it because I love it so much. But Dracula meets Renfield at the bottom of the stairs, and he tells him to follow him. Dracula walks up the stairs, and then Dracula walks out of frame going up the stairs, and then we follow Renfield up the stairs, and halfway up the stairs he comes to a undisturbed spider web blocking the path, and he has to break the web and walk through. I love that so much because, like, if you ask what happens in that scene, you would say, "Oh, Dracula is able to walk through a spider web that Renfield can't do," but you don't see that. It's all implied so simply that we know a character just walked up here, so how could there be a spider web here? And it's like in an era where we have virtually no special effects, very limited abilities, the creative thinking to come up with something like that is it's why I love watching movies from that era. Just like what they're doing with the tools they have. It's so simple, but I love it so much. I was happy to see a little bit of that scene make it here.
I agree, though, that like that's one of my favorite things about watching older movies was seeing them work within the confines. Something like Metropolis, like just the things that Fritz Lang was doing in Metropolis were so far ahead of its time. With matte paintings and being like, oh, if I film this line of people walking across here, but then I stick this matte painting in front of the camera, it will appear like they're walking through the sequence. And I'm just like, that, I know this statement's been used a lot, but it was very much a sequence or very much a moment where I'm like, Fritz Lang is playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. Like, it's that kind of moment of just like, he's thinking about this in such a different way than at the time anybody else was, that it's, not that other people weren't making great films at the time, but that's why Fritz Lang is one of my favorite filmmakers. But it's, with Dracula, the original Dracula, it's no exception. And have you heard the stories about the Spanish language version of Dracula filmed the same time as the original?
I did a deep dive reading about all this stuff, but I don't know much more about it.
The same time they were shooting Bela Lugosi's Dracula, they were shooting a Spanish language version of Dracula. To the point that like it was shot on the same sets. It was shot on shot with the same kind of equipment, everything, but like it was obviously directed by somebody else, and it was but it was the same script. Somebody just translated it into English, and it starred
Translated
Carlos
into Spanish.
Sorry, yes. Took the English script, translated it in Spanish. Carlos Valeria played Count Dracula. I think he was credited as Carlos Villar because they needed the names to be less Spanish, I guess. But it's an interesting thing that kind of went missing. It kind of disappeared for a while. But it was shot on the same sets. The main guy as Dracula was told not to watch Bela Lugosi's performance. So his performance as Dracula, it's also one of those things where, like, Bela Lugosi's performance as Dracula is seen by many as, like, it's still the standard for Dracula. Like,
Right.
He set the bar. So you've got this other fantastic actor also playing Dracula at the same time, but not using that performance as any kind of benchmark. It's kind of, because, like, everything that's been Dracula since then
Has been influenced by
exists
Bela Lugosi.
in that shadow of Bela Lugosi, but this one isn't. So on that regard alone, I think it's very interesting to watch, and it's shot on the same sets, but the crew would watch the Dracula dailies from the English language version, and they would look at certain things like the production. They'd be like, oh, well, this lighting, we could do this a little bit of a different way. We could, they'd see something where they didn't necessarily like how that looked, so they would rework it. So the crew was like working off the Dracula dailies like in real time, to the point that some have said that the Spanish language version might be the quote unquote better version, just because the crew was kind of working in real time off of the Dracula stuff. You have a performance that doesn't live in the shadow of Bela Lugosi, which makes it a little bit different. And it's also, again, it's the same script and the same sets. So it's actually a very interesting, you think about something like Gus Van Sant's Psycho. That's a shot-for-shot remake of Psycho, which Gus Van Sant, don't get me wrong, he was at a place in his career where he could do whatever he wanted, and that's what he wanted to do. All the more power to him. Always be closing. But to be able to watch something like this, where you're essentially making a shot-for-shot version of it, but different. And so it's a very interesting thing that they used to do a lot. They would shoot an English version, and then a different director and crew and everything would just shoot a Spanish version, or a French version, or a German version. Eventually, dubbing became the standard, and that just became the easier way, cheaper way to do it. But it's worth watching. It's very interesting. It's, even if just for like the thought experiment of just like watching this movie that wasn't really constrained by the legacy of Dracula. Obviously, like, Nosferatu has got its influence as well. I don't want to pretend that it doesn't, but it's interesting to watch a movie that's being shot at the same time, off the same script on the same sets, and seeing what ends up being kind of the same, and then seeing what kind of ends up being different. It's an interesting experiment.
in Bela Lugosi's version, he might say blah blah blah, but in the Spanish Dracula, he says ay ay ay.
I'd like you to cut that.
That's the best joke I could come up with during your. I was like, what's Spanish for blah blah blah?
Oh God, Jesus Christ.
I'm leaving it in. Bring it on, YouTube. Cancel me.
You're gonna get us canceled, man. We're both white men. We're primed for it.
Do you think
There's
the
no
gang
such thing as cancel culture, folks?
is the Lobos just so they could have a pseudo werewolf versus vampire thing motif?
The thought did occur to me.
When they're wearing like the wolf mask, I was like, oh, I think I see what they're doing here. That's kind of fun. Early on, there's a hitman that shows up.
Jesus.
Almost inconsequential. Speaking of racially insensitive, or culturally insensitive.
And they even make a joke out of it.
Yeah. He shows up and literally he's just a giant luchador. Like, up to this point, there's no reason not to expect. We know a hitman's coming. You expect like a man in a suit with a silencer on his gun. There's no reason not to expect that. But whenever I see that, it's just a huge, almost like Bane from Batman and Robin. I'm like, oh, this movie's a little different than I expected. A little more stylized than I realized. And again, I was already thinking this has graphic novel comic book vibes from the coloring and stuff. This guy is straight up just like a supervillain that our hero Renfield has to dispatch. And Renfield himself is referred to by Awkwafina as a hero, or he has the capability of becoming a hero. I mean, this very much feels basically like a superhero comic, or maybe not superhero. It feels like a comic book. I guess that's all I'm really trying to say again here. But the over the top and stylized nature just feels very comic book influenced.
And obviously Robert Kirkman being behind it, and the guy writing it being a guy that worked on Invincible, which certainly has its fair share of violence and other things in it. That train scene still lives in my head rent free. I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat being like, yeah. Like if Robert Kirkman had written a comic called Renfield, and I would imagine it'd be something kind of like this, where you'd have this,
Totally.
you'd have these character moments that were interspersed with these brutally violent fights, because that's kind of what Robert Kirkman does. And sometimes doesn't. Like I don't want to act like that's all he does, but like some of the stuff he's done recently, like Firepower, or what was the other one he did? I know it's very telling and great when a podcaster is searching for something, but Super Dinosaur, there it is. Surprised I forgot that. But plenty of fun stuff that he's done too, so he's got a good chance to flex the muscles there. But Renfield definitely feels like a comedy horror type thing that he would be right up his alley.
There's some great subverting of expectations throughout this movie, but I really love this. There's finally a fight between I always want to say Jean-Ralphio, but Ben Schwartz's character and Renfield. Tedward, how could I forget? Where Tedward has become a familiar himself, so he gets the superpowers, so we can finally go toe to toe with Renfield. And they're having this, fight banter. And Tedward says, "I'm clearly the yin to your yang." And Renfield's like, "We've barely met twice. Like we don't even know each other." But he's trying to build it up like he's his nemesis. And Renfield's just telling him, he says, "You'll just become a slave." And Ben Schwartz is like, "Well, see, that's where you're wrong. Because Master told me."
I love that moment. I love that moment so much, because it's just perfect. As far as like, oh no, like it's that realization that nope, this ain't what you think it is, man. But Ben Schwartz is just so, you want to see bad things happen to him so bad in this movie.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I wanted to see bad things happen to Jean-Ralphio a lot too. That character was insufferable to me. Like, I hated him.
Would you say he's the worst?
So much. Just flames on the side of my face, heaving breath. I hated that character so much. No, it's his sister that's the worst, man. Come on. But
he has the famous line. He's the worst.
I know, but isn't he talking about his sister? Or is he talking about himself?
Yeah, he says she's the worst. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
he probably refers to both of them. I don't know. Whatever.
Is that Jenny Slate?
Yeah. But anyway, folks. I do. His performance here is great, but like that fight between him and Renfield, that is the big Mortal Kombat X-ray moment where he explodes out of both ends.
Yes.
Where Renfield finally gets the upper hand after he eats a bug. It's it's just a knockdown, drag out fight between two basic vampire characters, people with vampire powers that aren't vampires. It's just that brutal violence. Like, I would show this movie to Liz, but she would probably be a little like, "Oh, it's very gory." And I'd be like, "Yeah, more than you expect."
Kind of.
She thought the Nice Guys was too gory, so I was like,
this is a little more blood here.
a little bit more.
There's I don't know, like if you're not vibing with a specific tone or sense of humor here, I mean, you've mentioned exploding out of both ends. There's certainly an audience this is not going to be for. Kind of looking back at the critic scores, that critic score is lower than I would expect, but I do understand this not having like universal acclaim. It is definitely a genre movie. It's going to pit some people off. I get that. But I think it's a blast. And Andrew, you don't need to sign on to this opinion. I'll throw it out there though. I will watch this movie again several times, and any given day, I would much rather watch Renfield than Nosferatu.
The new Nosferatu or
Correct.
Nosferatu in general?
Nosferatu. If I'm gonna watch Nicholas Hoult in a vampire movie, 10 out of 10 times it's gonna be Renfield.
15 out of 10 times it's going to be Renfield.
Nic Cage month. It's been an absolute blast, just like I anticipated. This was a great idea. Ed. I think you pitched this one. I don't even remember who pitched this one, but we put together a fun lineup here. We have one movie left, and I think we're ending this month the only way we really could, with The Wicker Man. I mean, this checks all the boxes for a poorly received Nic Cage movie. It's got the memes. It's got the over-the-top performance. It comes at an era of his career where he's still an A-lister, but making questionable decisions. I mean, it's a notorious movie in every sense of the word. And next week, we break down all the positives and what we like about it. Andrew, have you seen The Wicker Man?
I don't know that I've ever seen it all the way through. Truly, honestly, I don't know that I have, because I have seen the memes, but
Sure.
I've seen the original Wicker Man, which I might, if I'm feeling squirrely enough, maybe I'll rewatch it before this. But yeah, I don't know that I've ever sat and watched the whole thing, but I'm looking forward to it? ? So we'll see.
I saw it in theaters. I saw that
In
movie in
theaters,
theaters.
wow.
In theaters. Have not seen it since then.
For
but
once, the
the
scenarios
tables have
flipped.
turned. Yeah.
The turns have tabled.
Can't wait to dive into it next week. But for now, Andrew, I mean, you know what time it is. It's time for Ask Andrew. I get to spring a question on you. You got to answer it. Those are the rules. That's what we do. It's how we end the episode. If you want to suggest some things I can ask Andrew on a future episode, you can do that by joining our Discord. Hop on in there. There's a link in the show notes. That's where our question will be coming from today. Friend of the show, one Bob Buell, the sweetheart of podcasting himself. He has a question for you, Andrew. He says, what movie does Andrew think he would do the best live commentary track for? I think Bob might be subtly hinting at some bonus content we could provide at some point. We'll see if that ever happens. But
that would be really fun, man. That genuinely would, like, to just have us watch a movie and just have our mics and just record our real-time commentary over a movie. So that way, instead of watching a movie that you love, you could just listen to us talking. That would be great. There
was a time, I mean, speaking of the Discord, there's a channel in there for the BOTR Theater. We have done several watch-alongs with listeners in the Discord, but it has been some time. We did launch this podcast during COVID times, during lockdown. We had a little bit more free time on our hands to do that, watch a movie with everybody once a month.
Yeah,
maybe it's something we
life is
could,
great now.
we could, I think Halloween Ends was the last movie we watched in there.
What a way to go out.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, woof. All right, so great question, Bob. Thanks for asking. Appreciate you. But this is a good question. Now, if we're talking about movies that, like, I know the most about, therefore I would be providing the most, like, trivia while we're watching it, that would probably be Ghostbusters. Just in that, like, I would be the guy that's, like, pausing it and being like, now this is Rick Moranis. John Candy was originally intended to play this character, but instead of playing this character, he ended up having out due to scheduling problems. They brought in Rick Moranis. Now, if John Candy had gotten this role, he would have played the character much differently. And they had several discussions about how he was going to do that before ultimately Rick Moranis, another Second City TV alumnus, came. Yeah, I'd be doing dumb crap like that the whole time. And it would be insufferable. You would hate it. It would be the absolute worst. But as far as movies that, like, I have the most fun watching, and I think it would be fun to do, like, live reactions to, like, Clue comes to mind. Like, I think that would just honestly be, like, if you and I watched Clue and just literally, it would just be us laughing for like 80 minutes. That's all it would really be. It would just be like, what's their commentary track? They're just laughing because this movie's really funny. But obviously that's just a movie that's a blast to watch. I think that would be a really fun one to record a commentary track for. Just because there is also a lot of fun trivia out there about that movie. Trying to think if there's any there was like a classic film I'd want to do that for. Maybe Rope. Like if I was going to do like a classic film, like do like Rope, just like as we kind of like dial in on the kind of soft cuts so that he can kind of create the illusion of a single shot as he's kind of going through that and just like dialing in the performances, stuff like that. I think that might be a good one. It's Rope. So if I wanted to do like the serious, like, I'm going to do my best, like inside the actor's studio, like analyzation of a film while trying to sing its technical praises, I think something like Rope would probably be towards the top of the list. I was telling somebody about that the other day, that just like, the Hitchcock greats are known, like the Psycho, the Psychos, the Birds, the North by Northwests, the Rear Windows, the Vertigos, all those. But like Rope, I think is just as good as any of those. Maybe not Vertigo. Vertigo might be the greatest film ever made, but I think it's in that caliber of his career. It's that good. And it just doesn't get talked about nearly as much because, all the other ones gained their reputations, but like it doesn't even it's like it stars Jimmy Stewart. Like Jimmy Stewart's in it and he's in several of his other big ones. So I don't know why that one kind of flies more under the radar, but it's just such a great movie. And the way he was trying to, again, you talk about directors kind of thinking on a different level than anybody else at the time. I guarantee you not a whole lot of directors in the time Rope was being made were just kind of like, how can I make this seem like it's one shot when at the time you physically couldn't do that? Like, so you have to replan the whole movie and rethink the whole thing and how your camera movements are and how all of that's going to go to create this illusion. There's a couple of cuts in the movie, like 2 something. There's not a whole lot.
I think towards the end they have a couple delivery. Obvious cut, obviously there's cuts.
Obviously,
just
yeah, but
practical, but ones they actually let you see. Yeah, I think there's a couple late in the movie for dramatic effect. But it's anyway, funny.
That would be a good one.
I as much as I love movies, all kinds of movies, the ones that I seem to have the biggest, most drawn to, or the biggest reaction to, or just really get those juices flowing, are the simplest, or the ones that are just a killer script. Memento, I've talked about a million times. Like, it's just a very smart, tight, interesting, creative script. It's not a huge budget. There's not a lot of crazy visuals that you don't see in other movies. Reservoir Dogs. I mean, my favorite Tarantino movies are probably Reservoir Dogs, and I actually like The Hateful Eight a lot more than other people because it's almost just like a stage play. It's like one setting and just compelling dialogue. But Rope, I feel very similarly. I mean, it's one location, one shot, as you've said. It's just a compelling story. It's just a solid script, great actors in a room, 12 angry men, same, like they're just, I don't know what it is. That's just,
it's, if I may, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I mean, for film being a visual medium, I don't know why these movies struck possibly a bigger chord than any other movie for their simplicity.
Because in a way, it almost feels more impressive. Not impressive is the wrong word, but when you can move, you take a movie like Heat. Like Heat, one of the best. It's great. It's fantastic. But you have these massive set pieces that you can keep moving through. And so it's easy. I won't say that it's easy, but I would say it is a far simpler is not the right word either. But when you have these, big cityscapes and you've got these locations that you can use to your advantage, comparatively speaking, it's not hard for that to be more compelling when you've got location on your side, when you've got camera movement on your side. When you're kind of confined to one location and you can take that one room and make that room as compelling as something like Heat for that 100 minutes, I think that speaks to the ability of the filmmaker to take something that is so simple, but engage me regardless on the same level as something that would have the advantage of much bigger set pieces and changing locations. I think there's a very impressive quality to that, to be able to do that, to be able to take it. Okay, this movie takes place in a room. And in the case of Reservoir Dogs, it's not even a particularly interesting room from the offset. Like, it's just kind of a concrete block. But the performances, it speaks to the performances, it speaks to the choices, it speaks to everything. to make that simple setup that compelling. And so in that regard, I vibe completely with the idea that despite it's almost the simplicity that makes it impressive, because if I made a movie set in a single room, nobody would watch it because it would probably be the most boring thing ever made. But when Tarantino does it, or when Hitchcock does it, or when one of those filmmakers does it, they can make a movie that's deeply interesting, because of the simplicity. So I get it. I'm vibing with that.
All right. Well, Andrew, I love that your answers were all trending towards movies that you love and are passionate about, and that's what you'd be interested in talking about. And I get the feeling that's not just because we are a hashtag positivity podcast, but that's just what you find more interesting to speak about. It's why
would I want to record a commentary track for a movie I don't like?
Andrew, that's a very popular thing to do, believe it or not.
I understand riff tracks is a thing, but it's based, obviously, like, the notion of riff tracks comes out of MST3K, which was designed. I get it. I truly understand it. The problem I have with most people doing bad movie commentary is the very simple reality that most people are not as funny as they think they are.
Well,
so when they mostly meaning that when they spend 90 minutes dunking on a movie making quote-unquote jokes, it's just not engaging enough. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, you don't like it, like, but you're not clever enough for this to be worth listening to for 2 hours. But when you love something, I think it's a lot easier to have that energy be far more infectious. Not to say that, when the MST3K guys do like a riff tracks for Twilight, it can be pretty funny. But for me personally, like, I think I'm not an unfunny individual. I don't know that I'm a particularly, like, deeply funny individual, but I think I would be more engaging and more entertaining to listen to if I were talking about something I like instead of something I didn't like, unless it was something I guess I really hated. But even then, I would be miserable the whole time. I'd be like, why are you making me do this?
You just storm out halfway through. It's just silence for the rest.
We're 10 minutes into Batman v Superman, guys. I'm calling it.
Andrew, we've covered that movie. You can't use that as an example.
Well, I'm not going to record a live commentary for it.
All right. I love it. I love the answer. And will that ever happen? I don't know. But if it does, we will let you know in that Discord. So make sure you are in there if you aren't already, and come back next week for The Wicker Man. And until then, just remember that maybe not every movie is great,
but all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. You can follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. And thanks to Mitch for the music. Check him out on Twitter at I'm a Biggie Boy. Check our show notes for his SoundCloud link. And check out our store on TeePublic for some Best of the Rest merch. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. That's the only way that we grow. Follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.
Dracula is a grown man.